So a couple stories about my dad. Just as a child, I remember, man, my mom used to say that I was the daddy's boy. She said that she gave birth to me, and while while I was at home with her during the day, everything was fine. But as soon as my dad got home, I'd start crying, and then I wouldn't want to have anything to do with my mother. She was like, yeah, I'll immediately jump into my dad's arms, and that's it. And I'll sit on his lap, and I'll be with him. And I can kind of remember that, um, as a child growing up, he was that safe space for me. Um, it's funny when you grow up and you get nightmares and you need to go cuddle with your parents or something. I always went to my dad's side of the bed and I slept on that side of the bed with him. And then my brother came and he took the side on my mother's side. Yes, interesting stories about them. Growing up, I remember Jesse. He always tried to better our lives, and make the house good. And he had times when he had money, and then he had times when he had no money. And it was always interesting. He wasn't much of a yard worker. He didn't do any gardening, stuff like that. He'd mow the yard, the lawn, mow and moan. He'll mow the lawn and mow the lawn, and that's where I got that from. So I don't do it. Don't ask me. I don't do it. Okay, it's not a Louis Eusebius thing. Okay, we don't wash cars and mow lawns. Okay, we gladly pay people to do that. So with that said, my dad gladly paid people to do that. He did teach me how to change a tire and change the brake calipers on cars. We did all that stuff. Don't ask me to do it though. I think with some great complications I can do it, but as a child, let me think some of the stories. I had one or two lined up and then I distracted myself. That's great, right? He worked as an insurance salesman at a stage, and I think he did well. He had an El Camino a truck, Bokkie as we call it in South Africa. And my mother was in an accident with us. That's where I got this scar from. And he had a BMW, nice cars. He had some nice cars, but he always liked red. Red was his thing. So he used to say, whatever car, he doesn't mind the car as long as it's a red one, So my dad always loved red cars, red Toyotas. He was a big Toyota fan, and didn't care the Toyota as long as it's a red one, He had a bike at a stage, and my brother, I don't know if he'll tell the story, but I remember growing up, when my dad came back, we were very young, man. I think I just was in grade 1 or just before grade 1. My dad would go to work on his bike, and I think he was doing security at that stage. When he came back from work on his bike, we all had to have a turn to go just around the block, So we'll put on a helmet, go around the block, and then it's my brother's turn. And I remember this one day, my dad, grabbed my brother and went around the block. And then when he came back, he was white, and he stopped the bike, and I didn't get a turn to go around the block that day. And he showed me the helmet, my brother's helmet, and what happened was he got to the top of the street and he was talking to some neighbors and some friends, and then and as he said he pulled away, and my brother, and he saw in his mirror just this, so he grabbed, and that was also the hand that had the brake for the bike, so he couldn't stop the bike, and he had my brother was hanging like this, and he was pulling, and then finally got the bike stopped, pulled my brother up, and the helmet was scraping on the tarmac, it was smooth. And my dad's like, that's it, this bike has to go. So he put his bike for sale and got rid of it, and we never had a bike since then. And he just didn't hesitate to protect his family, That was interesting. I remember he was also I mean, he punished us. We got some hidings, and he had a leather belt that he whipped us with pretty good, and sometimes his hand, and he could dish it out pretty dang good. It was painful, I remember. But he would always sometimes just ask us if we learned the lesson, and then let us go. He wasn't a violent man. He loved hugging people. This was his thing. In church, he would go up to big men and just hug them, hold them. Very uncomfortable, and yeah. And the men would just break down, and they've never been held like that. It was weird, right? My dad would just hug them, hold them. My dad wasn't very tall. He was a little shorter than me, but he was big. He had a belly, and he did some bodybuilding in his younger days, and then kept eating like a bodybuilder, but stopped bodybuilding. So that did not translate well. But in any case, he would just hug men and hug people and love them a lot. He was a very affectionate person. He hugged people, and I know he hugged a lot of men, and they would cry, and then he'll pray with them and minister to them. He didn't care. He was a outspoken Christian, and the last job he did, he worked at a logistics company for a cement factory, and even the workers and the drivers that drove the trucks, they all came to my dad's funeral, and they all loved him because he had a way with everybody. Didn't matter your age or race or gender, everyone loved him. So there's a couple of interesting stories.